If you cast your mind back to August of 2024, you'll recall that I made a video about this car over here. Let's just wander over. This one hidden under here. And then in September I made a second video, but for some reason or other never posted it. So here's that video. There's often a bit of a delay, unfortunately, between when I do something and then when I get to it again the next time. But today we're going to try and make amends. I rubbed down the roof of the Navara, as you'll recall, and then in doing so exposed some of the previously rusty patches, and then didn't get to putting any primer or top coat on, and now there's a tiny bit of rust showing, so we're just going to get a little bit of rust gel, the Action Man stuff, and also there's a patch on the boot of the BMW which we can have a quick look at too, and put a little bit of primer on that as well. So this is the sanding down that gouge, and we've gone back to metal, clean metal, maybe a couple of spots here that we just need to go back slightly further, so we can then treat all of this with a rust gel. What's really interesting, of course, is the thickness of the paint here compared to newer cars where it's very, very thin. This is quite thick. You can actually see the layers of it there with the layer of primer underneath. On newer cars, you just go straight down to the metal straight away. So we lost the audio on this video clip, but what I was showing here was after using the Action gel and then washing off and then wiping down with Metho, I just sprayed a coat of primer on. Now this is obviously not a permanent finish, but the issue is also in being able to find a touch-up paint. Now I haven't checked the colour code under the bonnet, but the colour is, I believe, Tiger, T-A-I-G-A, Tiger Green, and the problem may well be that over 50 years the paint has faded, so even if I get Tiger Green, it may not match the rest of the paint on the boot, but that's something for a future video. So we're going to put the alternator back on. Let's go and fetch that and fit it. So the issue wasn't entirely the alternator, but I did take it to a fella called S&K, or Cell, S&K Drakenen, I think it is, but I'll put a link to his details down below. But he replaced this, which was the regulator, which goes on the back, but it's also the brush holder as well. So it's the regulator and brush holder, because he said though it was working, it wasn't working as it should, so he's replaced it with this one here, which you can see, and we'll put this back on. Now what he did indicate was that the reason it may not have been showing a charge was in fact due to the fact that there might not be a generator or alternator light working on the dash. So let's install this and then we'll check and see if that's the case. So we've fastened the alternator on, we've adjusted it so there's some tautness in the fan belt. We've put all of the cables back on and we've reconnected the positive terminal here. So let's go and check inside and see if we've got an alternator light that comes on when we turn it on. Excuse the weird angle, but it's really the only way I can fit the camera in, but I think this one up here, marked DEL, is probably the generator, but let's just check it before we actually turn anything on, because this is all in German, so I've no idea what a Ladung is or a Fernie. Or maybe just turn it on and see what lights do come on. Well, it looks like none. Let's see if the indicator light works. So I wonder if there's a fuse for the dash here, because none of this seems to work. Well, maybe we'll see if she starts. So it's not starting, so let's check all the fuses. So one of these has blown, and that's hazard warning, glove compartment, interior, something lights, ignition, key warning buzzer. So that's this one here. Let's just make sure we're turned off, then replace this one. Now this one should be 8 amp. Yeah, 8 amp. So let's find an 8 amp fuse, and there are some spares, thankfully. So that, I think, is a 10 amp, but it's not going to make a huge amount of difference. Let's turn it on and see if that actually survives, though. So we've now got indicators, but not much else. That fuse is done for. Let's put this back on and see if we can start it using a jumper cable. So we put the alternator on, we found a burned fuse, replaced that. That didn't seem to make any difference other than the fact that the indicators now worked. But there's no lights on the dash, there's no charge coming from the alternator. I had a tip from the fellow who fixed the alternator that if I were to put a test light on the alternator between the positive terminal and the other little terminal, that ought to make a charge, or at least give me a charge, but that didn't seem to work, so I probably misunderstood what it was that he was telling me. So I think I'm kind of at the limit, I think, of my knowledge of vehicle electrics, and I think the next step is to actually take it into an auto electrician. So I'll book it in, I'll run it down on the battery, and just using the jumper to start it with each time, and then I'll get him to give it the once over. It's probably something very simple, but it's worthwhile somebody like me getting an expert to take a look at it, rather than me fiddle around and replace things only to find that that hasn't made any difference at all. And in the end, it might just be as cost effective as to get someone to fix it, even if it costs a few $100 compared to me replacing parts for a few $100 and still have the problem. So look, we'll just make this a quick one, and I'll let you know how we go with the auto electrician when we can get it down there. Thanks for watching. And we've had a bit of movement on progress, so let me fill you in with where we're up to with that. So we're on a magical mystery tour. After getting the Troopy on the road, and you'll see a couple of those videos if you're a regular viewer, I've picked up on the BMW, so now I've got to try and sort out that issue. Now I think, and I'm going back a while here, we discussed that we identified the problem as the ignition switch itself, and it was discovered that the problem was that the switch terminals had broken down over time and the switch itself had fallen apart. So I'll show you a couple of pictures of the part that we're talking about. Now this first one is the contact set, and the other half of the switch is still in the housing. Now from the switch is a loom, and on the end of that is a 6-pin female plug. The replacements don't seem to have exactly the same plug on them, and so the concern therefore is that if they will even fit, first of all, is the diameter of the switch the same, so it will go back in the housing, and second, where the shaft comes through from the barrel of the lock, where the key goes, will that fit into the switch if it's a different shape or different size? So I'm just heading to BMW to see if I can get some details from them. Because I've now got someone who is willing to take on the job. We just need to track down the correct switch and ensure that it is the correct switch, no matter where that has to come from, whether it's from the US or the UK or from Germany itself. Just outside West Side BMW, I'm just going to pop in and ask the parts department if they can help me with the ignition switch for the BMW. Don't hold out a lot of hope. I think automotive dealers, a bit like panel beaters and all of that kind of stuff, really don't like difficult challenges. They probably prefer it if you can just bolt on a part, or you can provide the information that they actually need. But let's see how we go. G'day mate, how are you going?
Not bad, so.
Well, I'm going to test your knowledge, I reckon, because I've got a 1974 520 and I need the ignition switch for it. And I'm wondering whether you even have a schematic or parts listing for such. And it went on like that for quite a while and we both droned on. But in essence what it came down to is that despite the fact that I had a photograph of the compliance plate and the rego, he was unable to determine exactly what it was because he couldn't recognize the VIN. Now the VIN, for those of you who don't know, is the vehicle identification number, and prior to, I don't know, the 80s or something anyway, 89 or something like that, I think, in Australia, the numbers weren't standardized. They were basically just a serial number, and now of course it's that, I don't know, 12 or 16 character, whatever it is, standard VIN, which gives you a lot of information. But in 1974 they weren't a standard VIN. Anyway, what he suggested was that the VIN is somewhere else on the car. So let's have a quick look and see if we can find something, and then contact him again. Well, I've combed the car and I can't find any other examples, but this is the VIN plate and the little pop rivets have popped off. So let's clean this up. Then there is a serial number or something on the other side, so let's go and have a look and see what that is.
Photo.
So there's that number there, which is on that compliance plate. There's another number here, just some kind of, I don't know, identification sticker, and that number is exactly the same as that. So I'm wondering if that's actually what we might refer to as the VIN. Anyway, I can't get distracted too much because obviously we've still got a few things to finish on this one. So let's fire this detail off to the fellow at BMW and let's see if he can come up with something. Thanks for watching.